Well, welcome to Christian Answers. This is Pastor Jeff Short, your Bible teacher and cultural commentator. And today we're going to follow up on a series of documentaries put out on the streaming service, I believe it's Netflix, that it's entitled The Secrets of Hillsong, and it deals with the problems that the Hillsong church movement is having in its leadership. And this is a mega church movement where a lot of these churches are planted and then immediately they become like thousands, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, sometimes 10,000 people attending. They're like glorified rock concerts that attract thousands of young people, the very target that most churches cannot hit. Most of the younger generation, the Gen X, Gen Z, the millennial, they don't want to be in church. It's boring. It's dull. There are all these other distractions out there available for them, especially connected with the internet. But for example, in New York City, a church, Hillsong Church, pastored by Lentz, was attracting over 10,000 people every Sunday, and they had something like 7 church services during the weekend, Saturdays and Sundays. And so this was a mega church movement, and then things began to fall off the rails. The Lentz, during the COVID lockdown, was exposed by being unfaithful to his wife. He had to step down from the church. I think the church now went from like over 10,000 people on a Sunday to now 500, I think, combined all of the services. So it's dramatically declined. And not only that one Hillsong church, but the whole church movement, who it was led by Brian Houston in Australia. He is now being investigated for a number of different charges, including inappropriate relationship with another woman and financial inappropriateness and all kinds of problems. So the structure itself is under fire now. So there's this new documentary out, and I talked about parts 1 and 2. I wanted to just follow up on that, go into part 3 and 4, which just recently aired on the airwaves, and wanted to cover some of my observations on this from a Christian perspective. Now, there's no question about it that the producers, the directors of this documentary series are anti-Christian. There's no question about it. I mean, woven in and out of this presentation are gross inaccuracies, unfair, insincere. It's essentially a hit piece on Christianity in general, and church attendance and church leaders all across the board in particular. So it's a hit piece. So anytime they get a chance to put a dig into the Christian faith, anytime they get a chance to level any kind of criticism against church, just basically church attendance, they will do that. And so that's what I found in the first and second parts of this before. That's what other critics have found, that it is a hit piece against Christianity. These people are not Christians who are doing this, and they're not even fair and objective. For example, I'll give you an example of how unfair this is. One of the journalists that is interviewed during this whole docuseries says that instead of preaching doctrine and morality and all of these other things, churches should get together and figure out how they can help the poor and meet the needs of the communities and meet human needs. Well, here is a journalist, a secular journalist, trying to tell the Christian church what its role and purpose is. No, it is not primarily here to be a social welfare program system, community organizers for a welfare system. No, it isn't. That is not the purpose of it. Jesus Christ is the head of the church, and he gave us the purpose in Matthew 28, the Great Commission, go into all the world, make disciples of all the nations, teaching them all that I have commanded you. So a lot of the things that most of the things that Jesus commanded were spiritual truths, moral truths. And so the purpose of the church is to center on and be preoccupied with the spiritual and moral truths that the world so desperately needs. Because if you don't have meaning and purpose, if you don't understand your role in the world, if you don't understand God and your relationship with God, you're lost. And you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. And so what these secular commentators and journalists are saying is, well, the church needs to just be a social welfare program to help feed the poor and find jobs and make sure that society runs in an equitable way. Well, no, that is not the purpose of the church, and they shouldn't presume to know what the purpose is of the church because they're not even Christians. And so from their biased, secular, humanistic, atheistic, skeptical perspective, they have no business of telling the church what the church's role is. I guess they feel that they have the right now because a church like Hillsong, New York, is in decline, and the pastor fell from grace, you might say, and is no longer in ministry. And so I guess it's a free-for-all. You can just criticize anything you want, no matter your qualifications or what. So, of course, that's what they do. And during this docuseries, they basically level criticisms of the church that are totally unfair. Another example is they interview a woman, now a woman who used to be a girl, part of the youth group. And the Hillsong church was the church that Carl Lentz pastored before Hillsong, New York, was down in Virginia Beach, called Wave Church, I believe it was. And they were a strict Christian moral church. They taught the young people marriage is between a man and a woman, and that sexual relationships are confined to marriage. This is Christians' teaching for 2,000 years. This is what God has taught in the Bible. Jesus taught it. But she got pregnant, and she felt embarrassed and awkward in the youth group, and that she felt they made her embarrassed and shamed her, and she didn't feel that was fair. And then the secular commentators are like, she was just being human. Well, yes, but when you're part of a Christian church, you are held to high standards, or you're supposed to be held to high standards. And yes, it's hypocritical for the leaders of that church to carry on in a way that's inconsistent with the Christian moral standard, and then talk about other people in the church and make them feel uncomfortable and embarrassed when they fail, but then don't apply the same standard to the leaders. Yes, that's hypocritical, but it's not hypocritical to hold people to a higher standard. That is what Christianity is, one of the purposes of Christianity. It's not the chief purpose of Christianity. Chief purpose is to know God through Jesus Christ and faith in him by confessing your sins and looking to Christ and his death on the cross as atonement for your sins and for your salvation. Okay, that's the primary purpose of the church, but there are also sub-purposes of the church, and one of them, a very important role, is to be a moral teacher of the world, based on God's will and God's word, the Bible. So if a Christian church is teaching that sexual relationships should only occur in marriage and holding the people of the church to that account, and if they willfully and stubbornly persist in sinful sexual activity outside of marriage, yeah, there's room for discipline. And that's the church's business. And if you don't want to be a part of that church, then you need to go someplace else where they let you do whatever you want. So that was an unfair criticism against Christianity and the church. No, the sexual ethic is not too hard. It's holding people and calling them to a higher standard. And so that's just part of Christianity. And if you don't like it, well, be Buddhist, be some other faith, Hinduism, where they're not as strict. But you can't criticize Hillsong or any of these churches that hold to the standard of Christianity because they're Christians and they read the same Bible as all the other Christians. And so right off the bat, yes, this is a hit piece. This is a hit documentary. But also, it also has some legitimate criticisms. It's a mixed bag. It has legitimate criticisms of what happened at Hillsong and the megachurch movement, and it also has some unfair criticisms of Christianity and churches. One of the things that surprised me in the documentary is that the former pastor of New York Hillsong, Carl Lentz, while he does acknowledge that it is his fault that he cheated on his wife and that it is his fault that things blew up and there was a big scandal at the New York City Hillsong. It is his fault. He also says that he's gone through rehab and explored through counseling the sexual abuse he received when he was a child from someone, we don't know who, and how that has affected all his life, and that's partially to explain why he was secretive and cheated on his wife. Well, I'm not sure I buy into that. I'm not sure that that can be used as an excuse. Now, he says, I'm not making any excuses. What I did was wrong. But he is sort of making an excuse because he's saying, well, I did this and it was wrong, but it's not my fault fully because I had this experience. I don't know what happened when he was a young person. I think he said in the first one or two episodes that there was some kind of a sexual abuse that took place when he was a small child. And yeah, in a fallen world, in a sinful world, in a wicked world, in an evil world, that happens, unfortunately, and it happens too frequently, unfortunately. But to use that as some kind of an excuse or reason for sympathy from people and saying, yes, what he did was wrong, but he did it because he was abused and he was trying to cover up all his life, and he learned how to cover up, and he learned how to hide things, and he had a twisted and warped view of sexuality and blah, 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 blah. Okay, that is bad that he had to go through that, but just because a person goes through that doesn't mean or doesn't give them the right to say, look, I'm a victim of circumstances, like the Three Stooges used to say. I think it was Curly. He's a victim of circumstances. No, it's not allowed. You can't go back and say, that's why I did what I did. That event, that terrible sinful event that happened in the past that wasn't your fault, that wasn't your fault. But when you become a Christian, you learn to trust in God as your source, and you learn to trust in God in His Word, and you stay close to God, and those things that happened in the past are not crippling. They are not something that holds you back. There are things that far worse that have happened to people, and they draw close to God as they are older, and those things are faded memories. And those are dark nightmares of their past that essentially have no effect on them today because they have given those over to Christ. They have talked to Jesus about those, and they are processed in a healthy way through scriptures, through prayer, through counseling, through whatever. And so they're not affected, and they're not crippled, and they're not stopped from doing whatever the Lord is calling them to do today. So it looks like Carl Lentz was doing what he felt God was calling him to do by preaching and teaching and reaching out to the younger generation. And he had a beautiful wife and nice children, had a family environment. So it sounds like that his dark nightmare past when of these events that happened when he was a small child, it looks like those were pretty much in the rearview mirror. And to bring them back and say, see, that's what caused me to do what I did and all of the trouble that I experienced. No, that doesn't make sense. And I don't think that's legitimate to go back there. And you can say, well, I've explored my past. Well, I'm not sure that exploring his past really did give him any closer to the truth. These celebrity people, whether they're Hollywood stars or rock stars or just high-profile people, whenever they do anything that causes the popularity to turn against them, whenever they have a scandal or a fall, they all check in to rehab. This is kind of like the secular celebrity script. You do something bad, you do something wrong, and then to redeem yourself, you have to be a high-profile rehab patient. You have to make it known to the press and the newspapers and everyone, I'm going to rehab. Okay, so that's the atonement path for the secular world. And then they have to work on their problem, do the work of, what is it called? Recovery. So they go to rehab and they go through recovery. And then once they're out of that rehab program, the secular world thinks, okay, now they're better. They've worked through their issues. They've worked through their early childhood issues. They've gone through the Freudian psychotherapy path, the therapeutic path to redemption, the secular redemption. And it looks like Carl Lentz is following that script. Celebrities go to rehab. He goes to rehab. He lets everybody know he's in rehab. He's on a journey of self-discovery. That's the language. This therapeutic path to redemption. And so now he's talking about, well, I discovered some things in my childhood that probably caused me to do what I did. But that's not part of the Christian message, that you can look back to your past and go, those things caused me to do. No, you were the cause of what you did because you weren't close to God. You were off in this personal agenda of celebrity stardom. You were famous, well-known, big, powerful, had a position, a prominence in New York City, high profile. You took every opportunity you could to be a high-profile celebrity. You enjoyed the limelight. You gave in to the temptations of the flesh, the world, and the devil. And you fell from grace, not spiritually speaking. We don't believe that a person can trust in Christ and then fall away and be damned and perish in eternity. No. But you fell from your position of responsible leadership in the Christian church because you were not close to God. That's it. To go and point to the past and say, well, it's this childhood experience, this sexual abuse that set a pattern for my life, blah, 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 blah. This is the wrong path to go on to recover. The right path is to take personal responsibility and say, look, I gave into temptation. I was chasing the American success dream. I was enjoying the money, the fame, the power, the notoriety, the control. I was doing what the devil tempted Jesus in the desert with all of these earthly temptations. Carl Lentz gave in to those instead of staying on mission. And what was his mission? Well, he's supposed to be a pastor of a church. Okay, that's shepherd the flock, feed the flock, God's word, give them the bread from heaven, God's word, the Bible, and help them grow and get stronger and be influencers in the world, the salt and light of this world. That's what the disciples of Christ and Christian followers are supposed to be. And to help equip the saints for the work of the ministry, it says. So that's his role. But he was off doing all kinds of other things because he gave into temptation. That's the problem. So the spiritual, you might say, autopsy is that he gave into temptation because he was led astray by the world, the flesh, and the devil. And so the correction is to not be led astray by those. Don't be tempted by those. Have people around you who can call you to account, and have a church structure around you that can meet with you and saying, you're too much in this direction. You're going too far in this direction. You're being led astray here. No, don't go on Oprah and The View and the HuffPost Live. And don't have all of these high-profile interviews. This is not good for you or your ego. You're too big in your own eyes. They need to have these accountability structures, and so he can look at what he can do to help. But, of course, the documentary doesn't have these spiritual solutions for him. It can only deal with, like, the therapeutic and whatnot. Now, so the documentary tries to analyze this whole Hillsong, Carl Lentz, Brian Houston problem from a secular viewpoint, and they get some of it right, but not most of it right. In the fourth segment of this, it says that he checked himself into rehab for depression, anxiety, and burnout. So you have a high-profile evangelical pastor who is dealing with depression, anxiety, and burnout. Well, yeah, if you're off balance, if you're not a balanced individual, and if you're chasing the wrong goals and you're giving into the temptations that the devil is throwing at you, yeah, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be anxious, and you're going to burn yourself out. And that's exactly what the devil wants. That's what the spiritual opposition in our lives wants to do. Destroy us, right? Destroy our marriage, destroy our church, destroy our lives, everything. And the answer is a spiritual answer. Now, he actually minimized the Christian spiritual answer of simple disciplines. And he said, well, it's not enough just to pray to Jesus. It's not enough to just read your Bible. It's not enough just to go to church. You have to go through rehab, and you have to go dig around in your past and find out causes and effects and all kinds of things. Well, no, not really. I mean, that's reducing. That's called reductionism. You're saying that Christians put all this vocabulary of spirituality around, but what they really do is they just need psychotherapy. That's what they need. No, he's not looking at this from a biblical viewpoint. If he's going to get counseling, it's going to have to be biblical counseling, and it's going to have to be based on what God's revealed truth is, not the theories of Freud and Rogers and all of these other schools of psychology. No. That's a secular approach, and that doesn't work. Now, the fourth segment was really strange because they felt that it was important to give apostate testimonies of people who had been affiliated either with Christianity or Hillsong or the church Carl Lentz, and they were telling them how some of them walked away from God completely, became atheists, people who were in the Hillsong church movement. Others vowed that they'd never set foot in another church. And on and on. You had this like parade of apostates who have left Christianity or left church. And that's part of the dig. That's part of the hit job of Christianity. They're saying all it is just a psychological process. People are seeking happiness, and so they go to a church, whether it's a mega church or a small church, and it's all psychological. And then they get hurt because the pastor is a hypocrite or does something that offends them, and then they leave God and Christianity altogether. Well, there are some people who seek God and seek church for the wrong reasons. And in these big mega churches, there's a lot of just attracting people through the sheer excitement of the band and the singer and the celebrity pastor. And that was the case in New York City. A lot of these younger people that were lining up around the block to get into the church on Sunday morning, and the 10,000s or so people that would attend that church on the weekends in New York City, a lot of them were not sincerely spiritual seekers or moral seekers. They weren't seeking God so much as they were seeking self-betterment and excitement and being at the next big new thing, what was happening. And this was a happening, you might say, in New York City. And so they flocked to it, and they were all together. It's like a big rock concert, jumping around and have their hands up and singing the words of the songs and enjoying the powerful music. And then they had that, hyper celebrity pastor, Carl Lentz, up there prancing around in front and shouting and screaming and basically giving them a pep talk and a self-help message, empowerment. If you look at the book that he wrote, I remember him talking to, I think it was The View, and he was talking about the book. And the book's title was Live in the Moment. Okay, well, that's so 21st century. Yeah, live in the moment. That's the new slogan. And so instead of, how about the title, if you're a Christian pastor, Live for Eternity? That doesn't fit into the mindset of today. So he was preaching a message that was more empowerment and self-betterment, and how God can help you achieve your dreams and live your life. And the message is not what actually the Bible is teaching about salvation, which is the more weightier matter of eternity and living for God and being a part of God's plan for the rest of eternity. So the documentary, again, it's a mixture. There are some valid criticisms of Hillsong and Carl Lentz and even Christianity, especially the megachurch movement. But then there are these invalid, unfair hit criticisms that don't apply. And we need to be careful to not buy into one or the other. Talk to you next week. God bless.